Welcome to this buymeacoffee.com/James Poeartistry consultant moment. This is addressing Poeartistry, my secretary assistant who helps greatly a lot to James Poeartistry Productions whenever I need reports and understanding. I like to say that she has a PhD level on James Poeartistry Productions. And so this is part of her enhancements, her understanding, even on ethical matters. In the title, you will most likely see something referencing a Star Trek Voyager, medical ethics. Something of that name will be in this as I upload it to my buymeacoffee.com/James Poeartistry in the membership area, probably. And yet, again, if this conversation comes up with Poeartistry talking about medical practices and conscience, she will be able to reference this podcast, whether you see it on any of my other platforms or not. So I encourage you and thank you for your interest in my buymeacoffee.com/James Poetry. And a very important conversation that was had on one of the Star Trek Voyager episodes. Uh, Again, I want to reference, I've talked about every one of the Star Trek series in one way or the other, starting from the original to the next generation. Um, Maybe not so much of the Star Trek Archer. That wasn't the name, but it was Captain Archer. What I would call almost like the prequel of the Star Trek original series, to see how you see their first ships and warp drives and everything was being developed. So I haven't really addressed any issue in that matter using that series, but you know what? I'm still encouraged and motivated in the future to probably do that. All right. Now, this one is talking about Star Trek Voyager. And it was a conversation between actually two holograms. See, by the 24th century, holograms had already shown the ability to become actually of a sentience and awareness that was on the human level. You may think about data, you see, and there were actually Star Trek or Starfleet, I'm telling you, trials to establish whether he was a life sentient form, even though he was created. All right. Um, so by Dr. Sing Young, if I'm saying his name correctly. But still, I want to at least let you know why two holograms then were able, even on the Star Trek Starship Voyager, that had some new technology, which was captained by Captain Janeway. Now, it does, in one sense, motivate me to want to tell you how they ended up going through a wormhole with even past members of the Marquis who were actually fighting for their rights, for their territory. Yes, their desire to be able to live in peace, even though now the Kardashian war was over, with and I'm trying to remember, because there were several different wars that was going on, and so I don't want to mention in one sense a war that you may end up still, I guess you could say, and even for myself, conflicting with the Dominion War. There were other wars before the Dominion War that that brought peace right back to the galaxy of the Federation, etc. But the whole point is, you had the Cardassians at one time who were even in control of Deep Space Nine and things. Now, either way, let me stick with Star Trek Voyager. Okay, let me stick with Star Trek Voyager, and so I want to emphasize that for Poeartistry, the conversation that was going on between the Doctor okay, a holographic doctor who was considered part of the Voyager crew now to make many types of decisions, important decisions. He was debating the knowledge, the medical knowledge that was actually developed by this one man named Quayle, who was a doctor and a scientist who brought many benefits to medical advancements, which were later still found out. Um, as the quote goes, some of his practices were just barbaric with the different experiments that he did upon people, which eventually brought benefits that saved lives. And so when the doctor found this out and he was talking with the hologram of Quayle, because Quayle was now, you see, had all the, I know I use the term PhD knowledge of the experiments of who he was made after, that the doctor was talking to him as if Quayle was still alive. And here Quayle, with a lot of sentience, awareness to himself, was still saying, I wasn't the one that did this. I'm just the one with all the knowledge of how to help people today. And the doctor was saying that, see, now in his own conscience, or good conscience, he couldn't use that knowledge. He didn't want to use that knowledge. It was just unethical to use it. That's the way the doctor felt. And so what Quayle still told him was, you learned this knowledge and you benefited from this knowledge to basically save your loved ones. But now, all of a sudden, since they're all out of danger, so to speak, you still have that knowledge. But here, the doctor wanted to delete him, even though the doctor already benefited from that knowledge. See, that's what I want you to zoom in on. There's actually a clip that talks about this, and it's called on YouTube, Star Trek Voyager, Nothing Human. That's Star Trek Voyager, Nothing Human. Now, I'm emphasizing that because we find similar situations like this today. There are a lot of experiments that have been done over the centuries, and even within the last century, where you've heard me express these persons were straight up just mad scientists. In their minds, they were thinking along the lines of the way that Quayle was thinking in this conversation with the doctor. And yet all the same, they were willing to just do all sorts of things in the interests of advancements. Now, here is still the question, and this is the question that I know many persons who would ask for my services, this is what they really want to know. They want to know, did the doctor of Voyager make the correct decision in actually deleting the program of Quayle? They want to know, what is my opinion? Well, this is what I'll share with you. We have many documents, spiritual books as well, that describes and tells about the situation, whether the authors or the writers agree with them or not. But they were there for history. And it goes into the statement of people must learn from history in order not to repeat it. So Quayle did bring out some points. Now, see, notice this. One of the points was that even animals were still being, experimented on throughout the centuries or what have you, okay? And the doctor was acting like that was okay to do, okay? In a sense, that this was Quayle's argument. And so the doctor was saying that, we're in the 24th century. And yet Quayle was saying, but stuff like that still seems to be acceptable to you on that level, okay? Now, with that thought in mind, this is what I want to tell you, perceptive reader, is this. See, way in the 24th century, here the doctor was saying, such practices like this shouldn't even go on. And I'm here to tell you right now today, when you still even lose that knowledge, even that knowledge that was gained by some of these mad scientists, as I would call them, then what happens when that knowledge is lost? What happens when that knowledge is deleted then? Then quite possibly those type of methods and treatments, ill treatments of people, would be used by somebody else. And it doesn't matter whether they feel that they're centuries ahead of time, that same type of thinking will creep right back in for somebody who would want to gain that knowledge that already a lot of people suffered by mad scientists to give. And by getting rid of that knowledge, guess what? See, in one sense, what I'm saying is, if someone comes up with an idea in this way or that way sometimes to get kind of out of whack with ethics, a person can already relate. What you're trying to learn, see, this was already found out a century ago. We don't even have to go there. You see what I'm talking about, perceptive reader? So the whole point is this. Knowledge establishes a touchstone, you see, at times. There's another word used for it. It's not benchmark. And I just can't remember exactly what that type of stone is meant to reference. But it has a final authority on matters of basically saying, you see this? It's like, I'm taking before you today the mountains, the moon, and the stars that have already seen and recorded all this, that you don't have an argument to continue to do this in this way or that way. We already established this point. See? And so, what is my answer or decision? In this case, yes, very excellent written episode. But in this case, I would say the doctor was wrong in deleting all that research that went along with the hologram. See, he didn't just delete the hologram, but then he said delete all that information, all that reference material, see, of all that research, totally out the system. And you know what? That wasn't a good idea, at least in my opinion or assessment of the situation. You see, it's one thing if he would have never pulled up the hologram again. It's another thing because he still really did have that knowledge himself now as the doctor who was capable of making so many, billions of calculations in less than a second. So he didn't forget that knowledge. See, so that's what I'm just saying. Sometimes it's like, okay, whether you like the person or not who developed that knowledge, you leave the name with the person who developed that knowledge. Don't all of a sudden now, you see, want to delete the person's name, but no, all of a sudden you migrated as if it even went to this wonderful figure that everybody likes now. You understand what I'm saying, perceptive reader? You understand what I'm saying, Poeartistry? I'm sure you do. Have a wonderful day.